Hello everyone, welcome back to another lecture on the course Python Fundamentals Building Blocks for Aspiring Developers. So we will continue with the fourth module about functions. According to our agenda, we are at the 16th day. Here we will learn about lambda functions. This is a bit of advanced kind of thing. So it's good to know. Let's begin lambda functions. So what is a lambda function? So it basically is a function. It is nothing different than a function, but it is created in a slightly different way. It is also called an anonymous function, and these are much simpler when we are defining them. These are inline functions. These functions are used when we want to define a very small function, and if we use the ordinary syntax, then it takes up a lot of lines just for a very small function. So when we have that case, we shift to lambda functions because these are easier to define and they just take one line to define it. So let's have a look at how they look. So this is how a lambda function looks. So you see it is only defined in one single line. So according to this, you can see that we have the function name. It is defined kind of like we define a variable, but this is a function name, which is add. Then moving on, we see the keyword lambda. So lambda keyword tells Python that this is a lambda function. Then right after lambda, we define the number of parameters or the parameters that the function should take as input. We can define as many parameters we want, but usually when we are using lambda functions, it is a simpler function, so it usually does not have too many parameters, because if it has too many parameters, then obviously the body of the function will be a bit more complex, and in that case we will want to use a ordinary or a simple function. But in this case, x and y are the parameters, and then we separate that by a colon, and after the column we define the body of the function. So in this case, we are just doing an addition, that is x plus y, and since we are not doing any print, it will return this value by default. So now in the next line, when I call the function, I need to use the same name, which is add. Then in the parentheses, I need to input the arguments. It is the same exact way as we call a ordinary function. And if we look at a comparison between these two, so if you see the blue underlining, you can see the name of the function. Flight name is same, but it is just written at a different way. Then we have the parameters, again very similar. Then we have the body, again very similar. In the lambda function, we are not defining return because it will return by default, and everything when we are calling the function, it is pretty much the same. So let's go ahead and look at some of the examples. Yeah, so we have this code. So let's first define a ordinary function. Let's say we have a function add. It takes in two values, and we say okay, return x plus y, return the sum, and then we call the function with two values, and now we need to either store it in a variable or we need to print it. For this purpose, we will store it in a variable, and then we will simply print the value and run the code. So simple as that. Now if we are to define a same function but as a lambda function, so what we would do is that we would give the name of the function add. I'm going to name it add2. So this and this has a different name for now, but we can give it any name. So add, then equals to, then we define the function, but first we need to give the keyword lambda. Here we need to give the parameters. It has two parameters, and then separated by a colon we have the body of the function, and that is all. Function is defined. Now I want to save the result of the function, add 2, and I say add 4 and 6, and print the result. So if I do it like this 5 is for the previous function, and this is for this output is for this function. So you see that addition is a fairly simple task. We do not need to write a very complex code in the body of the function. So in this case, it is very easy to define it in one way, in one line. So this is why it is a preferred choice. We can have more than two variables too, x, y, z, let's say a and b. We can make it a bit more complex, but we want to keep it single line body. So we can say x squared plus y cube plus z over a and then minus b. So this is just a complex equation, but since it fits in one line, I want to make it a lambda function. And now just call the function. Okay, so it is giving an error because it takes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parameters, but I've only given 2 arguments when calling the function. So it gives me an error that 3 of the required positional arguments are not correct. So I need to give it to them. So I will just say 3, 2, and 5. Now run the code and we get a value. So you see how simple it is to use this lambda function for the kind of code that can be fitted in one single line. And if you look at the comparison, this is the name of the function here. Again, the name of the function. These are the parameters. These are the parameters for this one. This is the function body. This is the function body. And it returns by default. So that is all. So that was all in this lecture. I would suggest that you start using lambda functions wherever it is much more feasible than other ones, because it will then come into your practice, and it will be a good practice to use these functions where they are eligible and where they can be used. So keep on practicing, and this brings us to an end of um, this module, and in the next videos we'll start with the next module. Up till then, goodbye, and we will see you in the next one.